The Ethiopian Bible is the oldest Bible. The oldest copy of the Ethiopian Bible, which is full in terms of a Genesis to Revelation copy, is 14th century.
In the year 363 AD, a decision was made. A council of bishops gathered in a city called Laodicea. They reviewed texts early Christians had been reading for centuries, texts that described Jesus in ways so vast, so overwhelming, that ordinary people were never meant to encounter them alone. These weren't ordinary writings. They described a reality beyond the physical world, a structure of existence layered with unseen realms, a version of Jesus that wasn't confined to earth, but moved across dimensions of reality itself. And then, they banned them. The books were removed. Copies were hunted down, burned, and the version of Jesus inside them was erased from Western Christianity. Almost. But that wasn't the end of the story. Because high in the mountains of Ethiopia, far beyond the reach of those decisions, a group of monks kept copying. They copied through war, through invasion, through famine, through centuries of isolation. They had no idea the rest of the world had abandoned these texts. They weren't preserving a secret. They believed they were preserving the truth. So they kept going, generation after generation, writing by hand, line by line, word by word, protecting something the rest of the world had forgotten. And what they preserved reveals a side of Jesus most people were never taught to see. Not the gentle figure of paintings, but something far more intense, far more cosmic, and far less understood. A presence so overwhelming that even angels respond to it. A figure whose authority extends beyond Earth, into every realm of existence. And now, Mel Gibson is bringing that version to the screen. But to understand how we got here, you have to go back. The setup. Why this is happening now. You have to start in 2004, because without that moment, none of this makes sense. Mel Gibson made a film Hollywood refused to touch. He financed it himself. Risked everything on one story. Shot it in Aramaic, Latin, and Hebrew, languages not used in mainstream film for nearly 2,000 years. No compromises, no simplification, no attempt to make it easier to watch. The Passion of the Christ went on to earn over $600 million worldwide. It became the highest-grossing R-rated film in U.S. history for nearly 2 decades. It proved something powerful, that audiences were willing to engage with a version of this story that felt raw, unfiltered, and real. But even then, he said it wasn't complete. The story ended at the tomb, and what happened next was never fully shown. And this is where the story takes a turn most people never see coming. Because over the next 2 decades, he worked on something far more ambitious. 2 versions of a script. One that followed a traditional structure, something familiar. And another, something very different. A story that moved through multiple realms. Through the unseen. Through dimensions that don't follow human time. Through what exists beyond the physical world. Most people assumed that was creative interpretation. But it wasn't. Because what he described already exists in ancient texts most people have never read. And this is where everything connects. Think about that for a second, because this is where it starts to get uncomfortable. The discovery, what was actually found. What Mel Gibson is describing matches something almost word for word. The Ethiopian Bible, a version of scripture preserved for over 1,500 years, completely outside the influence of Western Christianity. While the rest of the world narrowed its canon, removing texts, simplifying doctrine, standardizing belief, Ethiopia preserved more, much more than the rest of the world was ever meant to see. And this is where it stops being history and starts becoming a question. Because if these texts existed the entire time, why were they removed? Take the Book of Enoch. This isn't mythology. Fragments were discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls, placing it in the same historical environment as early Christianity itself. Early Christians read it, quoted it, treated it as truth, and then it disappeared from the Western canon. At least, everywhere except one place. But Ethiopia kept it, And what it describes is very different from what most people were taught. It describes angels descending to earth, passing knowledge humanity wasn't meant to have, a world spiraling into chaos. And if that sounds unfamiliar, it should, because this version of the story was never meant to be common knowledge. And then, a figure appears, the Son of Man, a being described as existing before creation, seated in authority, judging kings and nations, revealed at the end of time. Think about that. Most people never notice this. That title, Son of Man, is the same title Jesus uses throughout the New Testament, and the description matches almost exactly. This isn't coincidence, it's connection, and it suggests something far deeper, that the identity of Jesus was part of a much older, much larger narrative. And this is the side of Jesus most people never hear about, not just a teacher, but a cosmic authority, present long before the story most people recognize. But everything you've heard so far is only part of it, because what comes next changes the story even more. The revelation, what this changes, the ascension of Isaiah, and this is where everything changes. This is where the image of Jesus begins to shift. It describes reality not as a single world, but as layers, 7 heavens, each more intense than the last, each operating on a different level of existence. And it describes something extraordinary, a divine figure descending through all of them, not in full form, but gradually, at each level, diminishing his appearance, so that the beings in that realm could perceive him, because if he didn't, they wouldn't survive the encounter. And when he reaches Earth, he is born as human, lives, dies, and then rises again. But the resurrection is not described as a single moment. It is something far more complex, a cosmic event, a movement across every layer of reality at once, a restoration not just of life on Earth, but of order across existence itself. And this is exactly what Mel Gibson has been describing. Not a story confined to one place, but something unfolding across multiple dimensions simultaneously. And if that's true, then the version of the story most people know is incomplete, because the image that survived was shaped by what remained after centuries of selection. But the earlier descriptions, the ones preserved in isolation, tell a very different story. A story of a being not limited by time, not confined to Earth, not simplified for understanding, but something far greater. This is the side of Jesus most people never hear about, and that changes everything, because it means the story of Jesus was never just about what happened in one place. It was always something bigger. So what did Mel Gibson uncover? Not just hidden texts, not just forgotten books, but a side of Jesus most people were never taught to see. And once you see it, it changes everything. Because in the mountains of Ethiopia, those texts were never lost. They were never hidden. They were simply preserved for centuries, waiting. And this is only the beginning. There are still manuscripts that have never been translated, texts that haven't been studied, which raises one final question. If what we've already found can change everything, what if the most important part still hasn't been read? If you made it this far, you already feel it. Something doesn't add up. Subscribe for more and tell me below, what do you think was left out and why?